It wasn't the smell of the burning butter or the sudden, deafening shriek of the fire alarm that woke me up that night. It was the silence after. The kind of silence that doesn't just fill a room, but sinks its teeth into your soul and tells you everything you've ever worked for is gone. I was 25 years old, a culinary prodigy, the youngest chef in the city to earn not one, but two Michelin stars. My restaurant was called Ether. It meant the upper air, the pure, bright realm where gods breathed. Pretentious? Maybe, but I'd earned the right to be pretentious. And in the space of one controlled, calculated inferno, I became nothing. Let me take you back 6 years, before the fire, before the betrayal, before I learned that the restaurant industry isn't just about food, it's about blood. My name is Adrian Cross, and by 23, I'd already worked in 7 countries, trained under 3 of the world's best chefs, and developed a culinary philosophy that food critics called transcendent. But here's what they didn't write about in their glowing reviews. I was also a massive nerd. While other chefs spent their off hours drinking and partying, I was teaching myself financial modeling, studying market patterns, playing with algorithmic trading simulations. My therapist said it was a control issue. I said it was just another kind of recipe, except instead of combining flavors, you combined data points. When I opened Ether, I didn't just create a restaurant. I created a system. Every dish was engineered for maximum profit margin. Every wine pairing calculated for optimal markup. Every seat choreographed for perfect turnover. The food was art. The business was mathematics. And it was working. 2 Michelin stars in 18 months, a waiting list 3 months long, revenue that would make most restaurateurs weep with envy. That's when Marcus Thorne walked into my life. Marcus owned 7 restaurants across the city. Not good restaurants, profitable ones. The kind of places where you paid $200 for an experience, not for food that actually tasted like anything. He wanted to partner with me, expand Ether into a brand. 5 locations in 3 years, he said. Make me rich, he said. I told him to go to hell. See, I knew Marcus's reputation. I knew about the chefs who'd partnered with him, only to find themselves squeezed out of their own restaurants, their recipes stolen, their names buried in the fine print of legal documents. I knew about the Wolf. Nobody knew the Wolf's real name. He was Marcus's silent partner, the money behind the operation, the enforcer, the one who made problems disappear. Some said he was a hedge fund manager, others whispered about organized crime connections. All I knew for certain was that when Marcus Thorne wanted something, the Wolf made sure he got it. And Marcus wanted Ether. After I rejected Marcus, strange things started happening. Health inspectors showed up unannounced, twice in a week. We passed every inspection, but the harassment was the point. My suppliers suddenly had delivery issues. Prime beef arrived late. Specialty ingredients were out of stock. 3 of my line cooks got job offers from Marcus's restaurants, double their current salary, 2 accepted. I was 25 and exhausted, but I wasn't stupid. I knew what was happening. This was a siege. Marcus was trying to pressure me into selling, or failing that, trying to make me fail. So I did something crazy. I started documenting everything. Every suspicious incident, every coincidence, every connection I could find between Marcus, his restaurants, and the problems plaguing mine. And I created an insurance policy. Remember how I said I was a nerd? Well, I'd spent years developing a proprietary financial algorithm, a predictive model that could analyze market trends, consumer behavior, supply chain vulnerabilities. I called it the Alchemist because it seemed to turn data into gold. The Alchemist could predict which restaurants would succeed or fail with 87% accuracy. It could identify optimal pricing structures, menu compositions, even the perfect neighborhood for expansion. It was worth millions, maybe tens of millions. And I hid the complete code in the last place anyone would look, encrypted inside the metadata of a scanned receipt for vanilla beans buried in my restaurant's financial records. The night of the fire, I wasn't at the restaurant. I was at a food expo 3 hours away with 200 witnesses and time-stamped security footage. But someone was at Ether. The fire started in the kitchen, investigators said. Grease fire, common in restaurants. Probably an electrical fault combined with poor cleanup procedures. The insurance company paid out after 6 months of investigation. $3 million. Marcus Thorne bought the property 2 weeks later, pennies on the dollar. He opened a new restaurant in the space 6 months after that, using my supplier network, my kitchen design, even hiring away my remaining staff. He called it Apex, and he used my recipes. I attended the opening, stood in the back in a baseball cap and cheap jacket, ordered the signature dish. My signature dish, with one ingredient changed to avoid a lawsuit. It was perfect. Every element I spent months perfecting served to a dining room full of people who thought Marcus Thorne was a genius. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to sue him. I wasn't going to expose him in the press. I wasn't going to burn down his restaurant like he'd burned down mine. I was going to do something much worse. I was going to wait. You know what the hardest part of cooking is? It's not the technique. It's not the creativity. It's patience. Knowing when to add heat. Knowing when to let something rest. Knowing that some dishes take years to reach perfection. I disappeared. Changed my name, legally, thoroughly. Became Adrian Cross, data analyst for a mid-tier financial consulting firm. I kept my head down. Lived in an anonymous apartment in a neighborhood where nobody cared about restaurants or celebrity chefs. Let my beard grow out. Gained 30 pounds from stress eating and lack of kitchen work. The culinary world forgot about me. Another cautionary tale about young chefs who burned too bright, too fast. But I never forgot about Marcus Thorne. See, what Marcus didn't understand about The Alchemist, it wasn't just a predictive model for restaurant success. It was a comprehensive financial analysis tool that could map entire business ecosystems. And over 5 years, working 16-hour days after my day job, I used it to map every single aspect of Marcus Thorne's empire. I learned everything. His corporate structure, 23 shell companies, all intricately nested to hide ownership and optimize tax avoidance. His investor network, 47 individuals and institutions, each with different terms, different expectations, different pressure points. His cash flow, where every dollar came from, where it went, which restaurants were actually profitable versus which ones were just for show. His debts, and oh, the debts. Marcus lived like a king, but his empire was a house of cards held together with loans, credit lines, and increasingly desperate refinancing. And the wolf. I finally figured out who the wolf was. Victor Kang, 73 years old, former investment banker turned private equity predator. He specialized in what he called hostile mentorship, identifying promising businesses, forcing partnerships through intimidation and market manipulation, then extracting maximum value before discarding the husk. He'd done it 17 times before Marcus. Each time, the pattern was the same. Identify target, apply pressure, force partnership, extract value, discard. Marcus thought he was using Victor's money to build an empire. Victor knew he was just another temporary host for a parasite. But here's the beautiful part. Victor and Marcus hated each other. Their partnership agreement was a masterpiece of mutual mistrust. Clauses within clauses, poison pills, competing control mechanisms. Each man thought he'd outsmarted the other. And that gave me my opening. See, I didn't want to just destroy Marcus. That would be too simple, too quick, too kind. I wanted to watch his empire devour itself. I wanted Marcus and Victor to tear each other apart fighting over the scraps. I wanted every investor to turn on each other like starving dogs. And I wanted to walk away $50 million richer. The key was that vanilla bean receipt. Year 4 of my exile, I anonymously sent a tip to a food blogger. Check out Apex's recipes. Look familiar? The blogger did a comparison piece, noted the similarities between Apex's menu and the legendary lost recipes of Ether, suggested Marcus had been inspired by the defunct restaurant. Marcus's PR team went into overdrive. He gave interviews about how he'd reimagined classic techniques, how all artists borrowed from each other, how imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. But the seed was planted. People started wondering, started comparing, started asking questions. Then, year 5, I created a shell company, then another, then a network of 12 companies, each with legitimate business purposes, clean paperwork, and no obvious connection to each other or to me. Through these companies, I began taking positions in Marcus Thorne's suppliers, his creditors, his subsidiary partnerships. Nothing large enough to attract attention, just enough to have leverage. And I started making very careful, very specific mistakes. A supplier misses a delivery. A creditor gets nervous about covenant violations. A health inspector receives an anonymous tip about pest problems. Problems that don't actually exist but require expensive inspections to disprove. Little problems. The kind that happen in any restaurant business. The kind that Marcus had once weaponized against me. Except these problems were designed, calculated. Each one engineered to create maximum stress on specific weak points in his corporate structure. Marcus's investor calls became more frequent, more tense. The quarterly reports showed declining margins. Nothing catastrophic, just a slow, steady decline that made everyone nervous. Victor Kang started asking questions, started demanding answers, started looking at the books more carefully. And that's when he found the irregularities. Nothing illegal exactly, but aggressive accounting, optimistic projections, revenue recognized early, expenses recognized late. The kind of financial creativity that works fine when everything's growing, but looks very suspicious when things start to decline. Victor accused Marcus of cooking the books. Marcus accused Victor of sabotaging the business to renegotiate terms. Both men were partially right and completely paranoid. Their partnership started fracturing. Legal letters, arbitration threats, each man positioning to screw the other. And I watched it all unfold. Every court filing, every leaked email, every desperate attempt to shore up the crumbling empire. It was beautiful, but I wasn't done yet. There's a concept in cooking called mise en place. It means everything in its place. Before you start cooking, you prepare all your ingredients, arrange all your tools, and visualize the entire process from start to finish. I'd spent 5 years on mise en place. Now it was time to cook. I scheduled a meeting with Victor Kang, not as Adrian Cross, failed chef, as Adrian Cross, data analyst representing a consortium of investors interested in acquiring struggling restaurant assets. Victor met me at his downtown office, 73 years old but sharp as a knife, eyes that had seen 1,000 desperate pitches and found them all amusing. "Mr. Cross," he said, "I'm told you have information about restaurant market inefficiencies." I opened my laptop, showed him the Alchemist's interface, not the full code, never the full code, but enough to demonstrate its power. I showed him how it had predicted the failure of 6 restaurant groups over the past 2 years, how it had identified 3 undervalued chains that subsequently got acquired at triple the predicted price, how it could map market vulnerabilities with uncanny precision. Victor leaned forward. I had his attention. "Interesting," he said. "What does your model say about my portfolio?" I smiled. "It depends. Do you want the truth or do you want what Marcus has been telling you?"
The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. I showed him the analysis, the real cash flows versus the reported ones, the declining unit economics masked by aggressive expansion, the mounting debt hidden in subsidiary structures, the whole house of cards. Marcus isn't necessarily lying, I explained. He's just optimizing for appearance over reality. It's a Tom and founder mistake. They fall in love with growth metrics and forget about unit economics. Victor was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold. What do you want? I want to buy you out. My consortium will pay $30 million for your complete stake in Thorn Restaurant Group, including all debt positions. Cash, close in 30 days. You walk away clean. He laughed. Actually laughed. My position is worth at least $60 million on paper. On paper, I agreed. In reality, it's maybe 20 and declining. I'm offering you a premium to avoid the ugliness of a partnership dissolution, potential fraud investigations, and the reputational damage of another failed investment. And what makes you think Marcus will cooperate with new ownership? I pulled out a folder. Inside, printed copies of Marcus's private emails. Communications with suppliers about using substandard ingredients while charging premium prices. Instructions to kitchen staff to replate and reserve returned dishes. A memo about bribing a health inspector. Nothing fatal, nothing that would send him to prison, but everything you'd need to completely destroy someone's reputation in the restaurant industry. Marcus will cooperate, I said, because the alternative is that these documents get sent to every food critic, every investor, and every regulatory body in the city. Victor studied me for a long time. You're not just an analyst, are you? Does it matter? Another long silence. Then, I'll need to verify your algorithm's accuracy, and I'll need to meet your consortium. Of course. Shall we say next Tuesday? Next Tuesday, I had coffee with Marcus Thorn. First time I'd spoken to him in 6 years. He didn't recognize me. 30 pounds heavier, beard, glasses, different name. I told him I represented investors interested in making a significant capital infusion into Thorn Restaurant Group. We'd heard there might be partnership difficulties, and we specialized in resolving such situations. Marcus's eyes lit up. Here was a lifeline. Money to pay down the mounting debts, to smooth things over with Victor, to get back to building his empire. What would you want in return? He asked. Standard preferred equity terms. Board seat, right of first refusal on strategic decisions, and one more thing. We need you to agree to binding arbitration on any disputes with Victor Kang. No litigation, quick resolution. We can't have our investment tied up in legal battles. Marcus hesitated, but not for long. Drowning men don't ask questions about the rope. He signed. Tuesday afternoon, I met with Victor. Showed him the alchemist's complete track record, anonymized of course, introduced him to my consortium, actually just fronts for my various shell companies, but with legitimate-looking paperwork. Victor's lawyers spent a week doing due diligence. I'd prepared for this. Every document was real, every company legitimate, every claim verifiable. They couldn't find a single red flag because there wasn't one. I wasn't running a con. I was just a very motivated buyer with proprietary information. Victor signed. $30 million. I liquidated everything I had quietly built over 5 years to raise the cash, mortgaged my future on this one play. Victor Kang walked away clean, probably thinking he'd dodged a bullet. Marcus thought he'd found a white knight investor. Neither of them knew they'd just sold everything to the chef they'd burned 6 years ago. Now I owned 60% of Thorn Restaurant Group. Marcus owned 40%. And per the operating agreement, I had majority control of all strategic decisions. First board meeting, I exercised my authority. We need to fix the cost structure, I announced, starting with a comprehensive audit of all kitchen operations, supplier contracts, and recipe standardization. Marcus protested, "The food is fine. We don't need to change anything." We're hemorrhaging money on ingredient costs. The audit is mandatory per our investment agreement. The audit revealed what I already knew. Marcus had been using my recipes, not just inspired by them, using the actual formulas, techniques, and even some of my signature presentations.
My lawyer sent a letter. Copyright infringement, theft of trade secrets, damages estimated at, well, we threw out a big number. 20 million, 50 million. Take your pick. Marcus panicked, claimed he'd never seen my recipes. Must have been independent development, convergent evolution. My lawyers produced documentation, time-stamped photos from Aether, testimony from former staff, a detailed analysis showing the mathematical impossibility of independent development of 12 identical signature dishes. We can fight this, Marcus said in an emergency board meeting. It'll be expensive, but... Or, I interrupted, we can settle. I'm prepared to offer terms. The terms were simple. Marcus would sell me his remaining 40% ownership. Price, $20 million, paid over 5 years. I don't have $20 million, Marcus said. I know. That's why you'll be working for it. I'm making you executive chef of the restaurant group. Salary, $400,000 a year. 5-year contract. You'll earn your buyout through labor. The beautiful part? This was actually generous. Marcus kept his job, kept his reputation, avoided a devastating public lawsuit. In 5 years, he'd walk away with his name intact and a few million in earnings. He just wouldn't own any of it anymore. But that's not the real revenge. That's just housekeeping. Remember The Alchemist? Remember that vanilla bean receipt? Over 5 years, while I'd been mapping Marcus's empire and planning this takeover, I'd also been doing something else. I'd been licensing The Alchemist to other companies, anonymously, through layers of shell companies and legal entities. Small licenses at first, then bigger ones. Restaurant analytics firms, food service consultants, private equity firms evaluating acquisitions, even a few hedge funds looking at restaurant sector investments. I'd licensed the algorithm to 47 different entities over 5 years. The revenue? $93 million. After taxes, legal fees, and operational expenses, $68 million net. But I couldn't just materialize that money without raising questions. The IRS frowns on mysterious millions. So I'd been carefully laundering it, not illegally, but through legitimate investment vehicles, consulting fees, licensing agreements. Now, with my purchase of Thorn Restaurant Group, I had the perfect vehicle to bring that money into the light. I announced a major recapitalization of the company. Investment from prior ventures to expand operations. Perfectly legal, perfectly documented. The money that Marcus's arson had inadvertently helped me create, now going to transform his stolen empire into something bigger. We rebranded. Thorn Restaurant Group became Aether Hospitality Group. Marcus's name? Gone. My restaurant's name? Resurrected. We opened 12 new restaurants in 18 months. Not just rebranded Thorn properties, but entirely new concepts. Each one designed using the Alchemist's market analysis. 8 of them earned Michelin stars within 2 years. Marcus Thorn worked for me for all 5 years. He never figured it out. I'd changed enough. Physically, mentally, legally, that the broken 25-year-old chef he'd destroyed was unrecognizable as the calculating businessman who now owned him. Every day, he came to work in restaurants bearing my name. He cooked food using my techniques. He answered to my board, and he earned his freedom dollar by dollar.